Hey, everybody, and we thank you guys for joining us this evening. And this evening, I'm really excited because we got Nick Kennedy. So he's half of the state record holder, right? And I guess that would be how we would say it. Him and his companion, buddy, brother in
Growing
giant
partner.
pumpkin growing,
Yeah,
yeah,
I,
Ron
I
Root.
call him my uncle sometimes too.
There
So
you go. Yeah. They hold the California state record. And so I was really, really excited to get him on. Thank you so much for coming on this evening, Nick, with us and doing this with us.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, guys, we're going to jump straight into this because we got a lot to cover and a short amount of time to do it. So, first and foremost, what got you into giant pumpkin growing?
Yeah, sure. And I'll be a little bit repetitive, obviously, from other podcasts I've been on before. But I would say if it wasn't for meeting my wife and having our first son, it wouldn't have happened. So my son's born October 9th, 2017. So back then, when I found out I was having a baby, I researched and I thought, oh man, how cool would it be to have a pumpkin patch for my kid when he's a baby or as he gets older. And so knowing that he was after that first year he was born, I thought the second year, 2018, I was like, oh, I gotta have a pumpkin patch. So had my first pumpkin patch, just grew Big Macs, and then the standard field pumpkins and some other ones. And then I started researching. I was like, I feel like I saw a giant pumpkin somewhere as like a real thing, like I felt like they've been around for a while. And so then I started researching and um, found out there was a giant pumpkin community on Facebook and went down the rabbit hole of all that. And then I met Derek Ruthruff, and Derek Ruthruff was really the guy who I was the newbie who had a bunch of questions, and I researched for probably 2-3 years before getting into it. Granted, this is 2018, 2019, and I really didn't get my first one into the ground till 2022, I didn't compete my first year till 2022. So and I think I sort of regret that in some regards. But anyway, so I got in there, and then Derek told me a ton of questions about how to get started with things, and he was really just awesome, and the groups were great. Chris Brown's group and all the Facebook groups were great.
Right.
And then last 2 years ago, Ron Root and I partnered up, and Ron was he had been retired or semi-retired, I guess you could say, for some time after a while, and he hadn't grown. And so him and Leonardo Urania, who's a very well-respected grower out here, he put me in contact with Ron and said, Ron, hey, I think you got a mentor, or you got somebody who would like to be mentored. And so I said, sure, take me under your wing. And so I was just like an open book. I took notes. I mean, I still do this day. Usually I'm up until midnight every night researching plants, biology, everything you think of. And so Ron was just giving me a wealth of information, and I put that to pen and paper. And, now here Ron and I are in our sort of third season together. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, what is, we're going ahead and talk about this. What was your first giant pumpkin that you grew? How much of that way compared to what you did last year?
Yeah, sure. So my first giant pumpkin was 1,350 pounds, right on the button. Competed, and I brought it to Elk Grove. I think I took ninth place, and I was really excited about that top 10 finish for my first one against some big hitters like Jose Ceja and Ruben Frias and other guys. Um, and that was awesome. I grew up my house here in like a little suburban town called Fair Oaks in Sacramento County, and during that time, my goal was only to break the city record, which I think was like, I can't remember, like 1,063 pounds or something like that. And so that was my goal: grow over 1,000 pounds. Originally it was 500, and then I got to 500 pretty quickly. So then I was like, okay, got to make a stretch goal, and then it was over 1,100 and ended up 1,350. So.
That's awesome. And then last year you blew that away with what did you guys grow last year?
Yeah, so last year we grew four pumpkins last year, and this year we're growing four pumpkins. But last year we got two to scale. Two of them unfortunately rotted out, didn't make it due to disease. But our smaller one was 2,036 pounds off the 1953 Deletus, and then our bigger one was the state record. We called it Pohaku, at 2,497 pounds. So.
That is a beast of a pumpkin. So before that, because I don't want to leave Ron out, even though he's not here. Before that,
Sure.
Ron's biggest pumpkin was how big?
Yeah, so Ron's biggest pumpkin, I think was, I'll double check it because I just looked it up.
I think it
His
was eight.
was in 2015. He was 1806, and I think he won Half Moon Bay with that.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah,
So he went about 700 pounds heavier, and I mean, you went a whole lot heavier, like over 1,000 pounds.
yeah. It was definitely it was really good success for both of us. Ron and I, our goal for for last year, which we told ourselves from the beginning, and I'm big on stating goals. You can talk, Cindy Tobeck, Travis, all these guys, I'd say all the top growers. Um, and I wouldn't even consider myself a top grower. I'm just saying, like, all the top growers I look up to, all sort of say a similar thing, which is set a goal and work back towards that goal. And biggest one was, I said our goal was grow one 2,000 pound pumpkin and get my jacket. Those were like our two goals. And then as the season started progressing and we saw where things were going, we saw how big Pahaka was getting. We're like, okay, let's go for a state record. And so let's push them a little bit harder. And we did that. Got my jacket for one pumpkin, growing the way it was, and grew two 2,000 pounders, which was great. So, and I was a little bummed because we want to get 3 to scale to get the combination, but we'll get it this year.
So what is that? Just for reference, what is that like growing one over 1,000 pounds heavier? What does that? What not only the feeling, but what does it look like to somebody?
Yeah,
That would be incredible.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy to me because I think like Ron and I both had not seen a pumpkin really that big. We saw it at Half Moon Bay when Travis grew his 2560 the year before. But obviously when they're 50, 60
Right,
pounds within each other, it's not like they're not like monumentally much bigger.
right,
But when we saw this pumpkin, even early on, I think it down day 35, day 40, I was looking at it and I was measuring it, and I measure all the pumpkins myself, and I was thinking, there's like this pumpkin is like on a different level. Like our 2036 was growing fast, great, but I mean our 2497 was growing 66 pounds a day for a good amount of time. So it was on a tear. So again, to answer your question, yeah, I mean when it's that big, that much bigger, to me it was like I remember taking the the I would take we all take photos of our pumpkins regularly and we're often standing near them. And I kept telling myself, I was like, I don't want any funny camera angles. I just want to get a straight on picture of me, and I would take a bunch of pictures and then I put my kids on it and stuff like that. And I just remember seeing, I was like, gosh, this is like enormous. And then I think what really took me back a little bit was when we had our patch tour, and the pumpkin was around day 65, day 70, I think, and it was big. And I remember seeing Jose Ceja and Leonardo and Ruben, and they walked by, and they're buddies of mine, and it's just so cool. And I remember seeing Jose sort of do this face. He was just like he was just like straight shocked, and I was like, okay, so we have something special here, because I thought he was just like leading me on, like, obviously when it's there, you don't really have anything else to compare it to, right?
right.
You just know it's big. So I knew it was big, and I was really just stoked with it. I was just over the moon about how big. And then it was obviously like, take good care of this thing, don't let anything happen. So you're just checking it day and night, going to the patch sometimes 2-3 times a day, looking at vine stress, all that stuff. So
Right. So how big was the plant on
yeah.
those two pumpkins?
Yeah, both of our pumpkins are about the same size. I think we always shoot for about 1,000 square feet, and they might have been a little bit over that, maybe 1,100 square feet when we let the secondaries and tertiaries go wild after a while. So, well, I just say go wild, but we grew them out intentionally, and they're probably about at the most 1,100 square feet.
Okay, cool. And so let's kind of talk about your soil and all the things that you guys have done to kind of adjust. So what was it like last year, and can you kind of take us through what it's like this year? I mean, I don't want you to give anything away, just
No,
kind
sure.
of
I
like
can. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to tell everyone whatever they want to know. I mean, I think I would not have gotten where I've gotten without the help of guys like Derek, Travis, Cindy, people just letting me into their world and saying this. So I'll be the first to say I'm happy to tell everyone anything, because at the end of the day, you still got to put in the work. And as we all know, who've grown giants, it's a lot of freaking work. So
right.
yeah. So our soil prep, I want to say, starts in this year. It was February. Last year, I think it might have been end of February, March. And so last year we brought in quite a bit of perlite. I want to say it was like, I might be off on my numbers, around 4 cubic yards of perlite, 5-6 cubic yards of peat moss. This year we did a little bit differently. Since we had some sponsors this year, which we're tremendously thankful for. We used the Royal Gold Tuper mix, which is a cocoa core and perlite. It's about 40% of each of those, and then it has some other shavings in there and stuff. And we brought in 2 pallets of that, which ended up being about a little bit close to 10 yards in total. So we
Okay.
just threw that into our patch this year. We also this year we used a ton of Rocky Mountain products. So Rocky Mountain BioAg gave us a very generous amount of the Micromana Dry. And it's a little risky, right? Because last year, we put in everything like, all your organics like, seaweed, your azomite, your bone meal, feather meal, blood meal, all this stuff, right? And this year we didn't really go along that line, and the reason we didn't being is that, when you have sponsors, obviously rely on them, and Brandon at
Right.
Rocky Mountain was like, hey. I said, "Hey, can you look at this and tell me what we should be adding, what we shouldn't be adding?" Because their stuff is, proprietary mix, so he's not really divulging the ingredient list. But he said, "Hey, you need to adjust this. You add this much here and do this much there, based off of the Rocky Mountain BioAg." Because I mean, you look at that stuff and you smell it. You can smell. Obviously, it has a lot of this organic makeup. So, add a
Right.
lot of that. And then when it comes time, actually, and so obviously you till that rotated in, get all that. Um, then from there we do our soil tests, and obviously I look at it as almost like just like a medical chart, right? So if you look at your blood and your blood's off and you have high cholesterol, or you need you're pre-diabetic, you need to adjust certain things, and our soil test is the same way. So if we are low on nitrogen or phosphorus, for example, then that other thing we brought in too, which was a ton of, and it spiked our potassium like off the charts, was we brought in how many pallets was that? It was a ton of really, really solid cow compost, and so
Okay.
it was OMRI certified compost from a RNH R&M farming in Fresno. And so Central California, they brought up a whole truckload of it and on bags. And so we out of that, our potassium went through the roof. So it was really high. So we were a little thrown off by that. And so we had to, we got plenty of rain, fortunately, so it diluted it down and leached later in the soil. So
Right. Well, and that's good. And it's good that it didn't have high phosphorus. So that always worries me, especially with
yeah.
compost getting high phosphorus. So, what is a normal day looking like early season, like right, from the time you transplant till, right now it's still early. What is that looking like?
A typical day. So, so right now, for example, I just pollinated 2 of our plants yesterday. I pollinated the 2497, crossed it with an 1885 Werner, and then we pollinated 1885 with the 2497. So, right now it's like we're in hyper growth phase. So typically I'll go out I try to get to the patch every day. Obviously, it's not realistic though, because some days I can't make it, and extremely thankful because there's days when Ron can feed him when I can't, or we balance the duties and do what we can. But typically, a day for me is to go out there. Right now, I'm bearing vines for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, because we're growing 4 plants. This last weekend, I had a lot of help. My wife and the kids came out, buried for an hour or so, got 2 plants taken care of, had a nice little assembly set up there. Then I had some more friends that came out later. And so right now it's going to be bearing vines and weeding like crazy, and then training vines and all that, and on top of your regular things like feeding. And then, we're slowly going to get into, hey, maneuvering the plant to adjust for the vine pattern for getting the pumpkin set, all that stuff. Tomorrow I'll be applying our hormones to both plants. So I'm going to get up at like probably 6 a.m. and head over there, make sure it's. I mean, one thing I was really happy with last year was I was really big on timelines, and so I pollinated at like 9:15 in the morning, and I made sure to apply the Florel within like that 5-minute window of that 48-hour mark. And so this time I'm going to try to do the same and get that mixture made the morning of. So get up about 30 minutes early and do that. So.
So you're using Florel, not Antithesis, then.
Yeah, yeah, I have my reasons for that. Matt DeBacco is amazing, and I think what his product is good. I would use Anthesis, but I always say you can't manage what you don't measure, and since I don't know what the magic number is for Anthesis, I don't feel comfortable applying it, because while there are instructions to get it close, if you've for those people who have used a TDS meter and stuff like that to try to get the number exactly to 100 parts per million on the Florel, knowing that one drop of Florel can spike your numbers by in a 4 to 6 ounce mixture by 10 to 20 parts.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. It's a lot to risk, and I think in the right environment. I mean, you can look at Jamie Graham, Northeast Giant Pumpkin Grower. He obviously had amazing results with using Anthesis, and set a monster 2480 pumpkin 2 years ago. So I don't
Right.
know. Again, I would love to use it if I could figure out that number, but I just don't know it, so I use Floral. So
There you go. Yeah, and that, and
yeah,
that makes sense. I use 4L too,
yeah.
so it just makes sense. So, what is the goals this year? I know we talked a lot about structures and stuff like that, or, before we jumped on. And so, what are some of the goals that you guys have got set for this year?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm big on goal setting. From the macro level, it was to pollinate by June 14th, and so to have a 120-day-old pumpkin for Half Moon Bay. So we, at least on 2 of the plants, will be there. Then the last 2 plants we should be there as well, barring that we don't have any plant issues. But those always come up. But I think our big long-term goals are to get 3 over 2,000 pounds at minimum. In an amazing perfect world, obviously you want 3 massive monster pumpkins to get there. I think Oliver Genetics can do it, between the 1885, the 365, the 2560, and 2497. So, I think pretty simply, I'd like to get 3 pumpkins over 2,000 pounds, get a 6,000 pound patch, and I think that'd be awesome. And then on top of that, I mean, I think the real other goals are, I would like to win at least one competition, come in first place. I think if we would have done things differently last year, we could have, but I wanted to compete at the highest level at Half Moon Bay against Travis, and we did, and we took second place. Had we taken that pumpkin to another competition, we probably, I mean, we would have won first, obviously, but it is what it is. No regrets, and happy that we did it that way. But we'll be a little bit more strategically focused this year on accomplishing these goals. So
I mean, you can't really be upset if you got second place behind a 2,749-pound pumpkin. I mean,
yeah,
technically, you was first place to the world record. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
yeah, and I mean, and on top of that, setting a state record in the process. So
right?
yeah, it did. I still felt like a winner at the end of the day, right? I mean, it wasn't.
Absolutely.
I
I
did.
would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have. I would have for sure. I'd have been like, that's the world record. That don't count. I'm first place.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I was stoked for Travis. I mean, I mean, if we can talk about that for a second, that Half Moon Bay day was just epic. I mean, uh, I felt so honored to share the stage with all those growers, especially Travis, though. Um, just sort of watching it, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years ago on the sidelines as a spectator, and then being there on the stage, and then getting second place and setting a state record, and then being there for the world record, and then just like bringing it back to the US. It just sort of like, it was just awesome. Like, I just think that was such an amazing day. And we're hoping to come back even stronger this year, and we're hoping to set more records. And that's the other thing. If we could break our state record again this year, I'd like to be over. That's the other thing. I'd like to be over 2,500 pounds this year too. So
That'd be great. That'd be great. So, what are some of the things that you're doing to ensure that you get that first place, to ensure you get that 6,000-pound patch, or that 2,500-pound mark? What are some of the things you're feeding and using to kind of push these plants to their max?
yeah, so I can talk about products, but I want to talk about one thing that's, I think, is really important. And my father-in-law, who's former government employee, always said this: is prior proper planning prevents poor performance. So planning ahead of time is so key. I mean, I could tell you, uh, last year, like November, December, I was already trying to plan for this year to really make sure that, like, I knew, okay, I was saying, okay, Half Moon Bay is 100 and this many days away. If I want to have a 120-day-old pumpkin, I need to pollinate on this day. So in my line of work, I'm a project manager, so I make work back schedules to say, okay, if we want to achieve success by this date, we need to have everything else fall in line on these dates. And so I just did that for this year. I did that for this year, and I said, okay, I want to have a 120-day-old pumpkin for Half Moon Bay. So a lot of it is into planning. So planning is huge. Knowing what you need to do, when you need to pollinate by, knowing when you need to harvest, all that stuff. Product wise, so man, I again so thankful for my sponsors like Rocky Mountain BioAg, Rootwise. There's just Extreme Gardening. Those guys are all awesome. Bioenhanced Organics. I don't want to go on a tirade and list all of them, but we have a lot of amazing sponsors, which we couldn't do, and so we've just literally thrown the kitchen sink at it. Like I feel like, if any time we have a good chance to beat Travis, it's this year. And it's obviously not just Travis. I think there's tons of other growers who are definitely going to be competing against us. I just know Travis will come out to California because that's what he does. And so we have put everything, tons of compost, super high rated stuff. We're using Essential, we're using Companion, we're using a lot of the same products Travis is using. Again, thanks to him sharing that information with us. And then we have a couple other products we're sort of throwing out that maybe some other people aren't using. Again, the whole Extreme Suite is really great. We're messing around with some Impello products this year. I really do think Florel, if you know how to use it and the right methodology to use it, is the only way to really break that next level. I make a lot of analogies compared to bodybuilding and stuff like that because I like fitness. I'm really into that. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was, I think, one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time, if not the
Absolutely.
greatest. And he looked fantastic, but he wouldn't have looked that good unless he had steroids.
That's
And
right.
you really can't break the ceiling unless you do things that are risky sometimes and involve pushing it to that level 11. So
Right. Absolutely. So some of these products, I know, like take an Aero mixer to use it, right?
oh yeah.
What's been your take on the Aero mixer and using it, and what results have you seen, coming from that so far?
Yeah, we actually just started using the Aero mixer not that long ago. We got it set up and we have two 55-gallon drums, but we're actually only just using one. We were going to use um one for compost tea and then one for our base mixture of whatever nutrients or fertilizers we're using that day. We decided to just go one, even though we have the setup. And the Aero mixer is amazing. So Aero mixer, the pump is really, I can't remember how many horsepower. Is it 1.5 or 2 horsepower?
Something like, yeah, I think it's one and a
It's
half.
yeah,
It's
it's
a
a
beast.
strong. It's strong. Like when that thing turns on, like that water is moving and grooving. It's aerating. It's bubbling. It's mixing. It's nice because I like that because we can feed a lot more in a larger gallon tank. Before we're using, the Ortho Dilaflow, and we're just doing it like a 16-ounce concentrate. This way we can, Travis is always saying send it, right? Like we're gonna send it this year. We're doing quite a bit heavier dosages than we did last year. Again, we're risking it because we want to push it to the different levels, and that saves us a ton of time. I think if anything, you're not sitting there mixing for a couple minutes at a time. You can go be doing stuff and then let it mix for 30 minutes, whatever. Test your pH, test your EC, make sure it's within line of where it should be. And then we have two Aero mixers. We have one as a pump, and then we have one as the actual
Sprayer.
distributor line.
Yeah.
So yeah. So and then they just gave us a hose too. So I'm gonna try out the hose. I think the hose is just gonna put out too fast. So I may
It
not go that route.
Be very careful. You got the wand with it too?
No, I don't have the wand.
Okay, so if you might want to get the wand, because I don't know how you're
Okay.
going to get it out of the hose without the wand. But the wand, you can get some adjustment with it, but be very careful with it because it will empty 275-gallon tote in under 12 minutes.
Okay.
Yes, it comes out very, very fast.
Is that the 1 inch hose or the 3/4 inch?
That's a 1 inch.
Mm. Yeah, I specifically asked for the 3/4 inch because I said the 1 inch hose will empty our 55-gallon drum probably in like 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
So yeah,
okay, I got you.
yeah. So yeah, and actually we just have a regular. I don't know what a standard hose is, if it's 5/8 or ½ inch or whatever. But we have a standard hose on there right now, and it takes us about 10 minutes to empty that, which is fine. We can even distribute. But yeah, the air mixer's been a game changer for us. Mixes well, aerates. You know, just your pH, EC. It's really awesome, and I think it's just nice. A lot of people sort of say, "Well, why don't you feed through your sprinklers or your drip lines?" I just, with biologicals, I feel like if they're, chunky or anything like that, or you have sediment, it builds up in those lines. You're not having to flush the lines. I just, what Ron and I have found that works for us is just getting, using our micro sprinklers as a misting and watering system, and then hand watering in the things. I like that. I like to be able to control knowing what goes where, seeing
Yep.
deficiencies of, oh, hey, this is a little bit drier there, I want to hand water that, or so.
Yeah, and I like that too. Drip is great, and there's nothing wrong with drip and stuff. I like it; it does well. But there are places where drip just don't get. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And like you said, you start feeding biologics and all that stuff through there, fish emulsions and different things. You get kind of gummy stuff in there. It kind of clogs you up a little bit, and you got to flush everything out. Even though you should be flushing at the end of feeding, you know what I mean? You should flush your system for like 10 to 15 minutes afterward. But I mean, things happen. We get in a hurry, we forget and stuff. So feeding the way you're talking about is a whole lot easier. I can either get the hose and spray it out that way, or I can get a 5-gallon bucket and take another little bucket and kind of, oh, well, I need to water a little bit here or there or wherever.
Mhm.
And you can get those biologics where you want them to. So, while we're talking about biologics, what do you think the benefits are to these biologics? How much do you think that they are affecting the way that we're growing?
Oh, geez, I mean, I would say I was not a pot grower before this, but I think pot growers have been using biologicals well before pumpkin growers, or at least mainstream.
Right.
And the pot growers I talk to who also grow pumpkins, and even the ones that don't, say, "Oh, dude, I've been using, you know, whatever extreme or root wise for years, and I don't like." The thing I like about pot growers is that they have at least my buddies who do it out here, is that it's very much like simplicity. It's like, hey, I can use this one product, like Rootwise, for example, and it's got, you know, over 20 different strains of different fungi in it, right? And it's a one size fits all method, and we're actually using it pretty exclusively on just one plant, and the biology component is covered, and it's like you got everything. It's like your one stop shop, like if you got to go to Costco or Sam's Club, and you can get everything in one basket and do it there,
Right.
um I think it's a game changer. I think that, I don't know who in the pumpkin world, inspired all the heavy biologicals, if it was Travis or whatever. I mean, I heard about biologicals from Travis last year or year before, and actually it might have been just last year. And when he was talking to me about it, wasn't anything too specific, but he's like, yeah, it's, biological diversity is really important. And then when I talked to Kevin at Rootwise, who's the owner, he's like, dude, he's like, you can be diverse in your biologicals, you will get gains like you've never seen. And then you got guys like Dan Sutherland, right, who they use zero synthetics. He's got the world record tomato, and all he's doing, he's making his own stuff, right? He makes his own custom mixes. I don't even know if he uses any specific, quote unquote products like Extreme or anything like that, but he's big on not turning the soil, let the biology work within there. And it takes a while to get those colonies set up and get them going. I can tell you right now, though, between all the products we're using, whether it's Rocky Mountain Bioags, Micromanoline, and the dry, and Rootwise, and and the essential, and all that, it's like it's super, super, like, the activity once it gets started and once it gets going, it's like you go from having like like a little mom and pop, shop that makes cookies and baking goods, to like, like a Krispy Kreme donut factory that's like cranking out thousands, in terms of like how the activity is just going super nuts, because our plants are growing faster than I feel like I've ever seen them grow. We're well ahead of where we were last year. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, are you guys feeding any synthetics at all, or are you
yeah, I mean,
all
yeah, we're not all 100% organic. I mean, we'll be using like some 0025, and some other products like that, some, some phosphorus, and we use cal nitrate and stuff like that. But we're not 100% organic by any stretch.
so what's a regiment look like to you? What's a feeding regiment look like to you?
Sure. So we right now we and it'll be adjusting. So typically we do one day on, one day off, one day on, one day off, one day on, one day off, and then so it's like it's a 3 to 4 day schedule, and we feed one day on, one day off, and just do it, and we hit them. And so originally what I was recommending to some growers is that if you want to feed every day, I would recommend, 'cause some people like to feed every day, and we will get to that point. We're just not quite there yet. Once we start adding in micronutrients like the boron, manganese, copper, sulfate, all that, we'll eventually be at 6 to 7 days a week. But we have our strategy, and so I would say feed 60% of what your normal feeding would be doing it, and split it, twice a week. So that way you can still hit it a little bit harder, as your plants are younger, and then, slowly boost it up. And then that way they're getting plenty of nutrients. I mean, again, it all depends on your goals, right? If your goal is just to get 1,000 pounder, throw the seed in the ground, give it a good amount of juice and see where it takes you. But if, you're trying to get the absolute biggest one, you got to feed heavy and hard and a lot and often. So
Right. And so are you foliar feeding too?
all of our feeding is through drench, so we don't do any. So what I would say is, what's your definition of foliar feeding?
Going out with a fogger or a
Fogger. No.
backpack sprayer and
Yeah,
spraying.
no, that's what I figured too. But someone else asked me, oh, if you get the leaves wet, that's foliar. I'm like, eh. Um, no, the only thing we foliar is literally our insecticides and fungicides. So
Okay.
everything else is drenched. So we literally put it on our hose from the Aero Mixer tote that's in there, and we just literally hand water it in. And again, it doesn't take long. It's probably 5-10 minutes per plant, and we just get it done and over with. So, and obviously it take a little bit longer as things go on, but
Right.
it is what it is.
What are your what's the regiment that you got for your insecticides and your fungicides and stuff like that?
Yeah, we typically like to do, and actually, it's funny you mentioned that. We haven't even hit it with any insecticides or fungicides, and we need to. Actually, we'll be doing it this week. Systemics, we started, and metachloride, like the Merit and stuff like that, we started a while ago. Probably, I think Ron even hit them like the first week we put them in the ground. Very, very small dose, right? It's all about baby steps, but we start that very, very soon. Bug bites your plant, spread some disease, you're dead in the water. So
Right.
we want to be very preventative from that standpoint. And then things like Eagle 20, I'm a big fan of. I know some people not a fan of it because environmental factors or things like that, but I like it. Works really well. Pyrenthin, if you're, or Pyganic if you're organic. I think I used it my first year growing, and it was okay. Held off the whiteflies for like 3-4 days, but it's just they build up a tolerance, so I'm not a big fan of that. I like the stuff that's derived from the chrysanthemum, which
Yep.
is is that bifrenthrin, I think.
Yeah. Bifrin or bifrithin or something like that. I know what
Bifrenthrin,
you're
yeah,
talking.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, that stuff works good. I would just say the thing you have to be careful of is you have to get a fresh supply every year. I noticed last year I had one that was a bottle from 2 years ago, my first year, and the effectiveness was, it was like we'd have whiteflies, and then like 5 to 7 days later we'd have a patch of whiteflies. I'm like, wait, I just sprayed, like this shouldn't be coming back that quickly. So typically, if you have good makeup of products, we like to apply it, once every 10 days. So,
Cool. So you did say you're using systemics like imidacloprid, right?
yep.
Okay. And are you alternating those, or do you give imidacloprid like once a month, or do
Imidacloprid, I think one about every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks typically.
okay. And then what?
And we don't mix it
So
with anything else. Like we're not mixing this with our biologicals. But then obviously the important thing is, since you're killing your biological activity, both healthy and bad, you have to replenish that. So then usually within a day or two, we're feeding biologicals.
okay. All right. And then when it comes to like the stuff that's coming off the chrysanthemums, mums plants, are you alternating those as well? Like are you doing stuff that's contact and also systemic, like an
Yeah, we do.
alternating?
We do both. So, um, just because you just want to be covered, and I don't feel like, based off of last year, we lost the two plants because I feel like they got mosaic, which however that was transferred in, whether it was bug biting it or soil bound. It couldn't have been soil bound in my opinion, because we'd never grown there. It hadn't been grown in 7-8 years, right? So to me, there's no way it came in through the soil necessarily. But I think we got it from a bug bringing it in or whatever it might have been. So,
Right.
so I think it's huge you have to have both. I think, if you're trying to accomplish, getting all preventive possible, you need to hit it from all angles. So,
Right. Um, another question I have is whenever you're feeding biologics, are you putting fertilizer in there, or are you just
No,
straight biologics?
no, we keep our biologicals separate. So all
Okay.
of our biologicals are biologicals, and all of our fertilizers. Actually, Ron might correct me on this. I felt like we always kept it that way. Again, Ron does some of the feeding right now. We both rotate here and there, but he does most of the feeding. There might have been a couple times where we cross it over, but synthetics we typically keep with synthetics and biologicals with biologicals. So.
But if they were organic fertilizers, would you put them with the biologics?
Oh yeah, that's totally fine. Because I mean, in a sense, that's it's I guess depends on how you define it, but like yeah, those would be just fine. So
Okay.
yeah.
And another question I have is, what are you shooting for when you fertilize? Like as far as your EC and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, our EC, I think we are at point right around 1 or so. Um, we've gotten as high up as 2, 2.5 before, but I think the magic number is right around, yeah, right around 1 or so. 0.99 I think is what it was last time when I talked to Ron about it. Our cation exchange, I think, was 18 last time. Our well water EC is coming in at like 0.02. Our pH is really perfect. It's like 6.9 to 7. So we're really fortunate. We don't have like a ton of salt. I mean, we don't have a lot of issues with our current natural state of neutrality in terms of our water and our soil and all that. So we're not
Right.
like fighting an uphill battle. Like at my house, my water is like 7.4, so it's a little high. So you usually
Right.
have to drop some. I have to do some stuff or I mean, not doing it now because it's just my son growing here for fun. But if I were to, you definitely want to have a pH downer and the appropriate things to adjust with. So.
Right. Um, and correct me again, but you're only doing feeding through your drip line. You're not, or you're going out
No,
there hand watering,
yeah, hand
right?
water. Yeah,
Right.
we only feed through our hand watering, and our micro sprinklers act as watering for the plants. So we'll water, say, 30 minutes to an hour in the morning, and then if the heat's over, say, 90 degrees or 95 degrees, we have them set to go off for, say, 30 seconds or a minute every 3 minutes.
Okay. Cool.
So
Cool. So it's kind
yeah,
of like just a mister system to
yep,
keep them cool down. Okay.
yeah.
You
The
got
micro
shade.
sprinklers.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was yeah, the micro sprinklers. I started using shade cloth and micro sprinklers my first year, and I told Ron had never used my shade cloth I think before meeting me, and I just know with my background, the little background I have in gardening and keeping plants alive, I was like, you need to shade cloth if you're in Northern California, so or anywhere hot where it's say you have regular days where say 75% of your weather is over 100 degrees at any point in time, you have to have that shade cloth. If you don't, the UV ray, the PPFD is off the charts here. Like, I mean, when I measure the PPFD, which is the light emission from the sun, we're at like 20 some odd hundred, right? And so, ideally, what all the research I've done says pumpkins and giants like 800 to 1200. And I know there's probably people who disagree with that, but I just know what worked for us. And to keep my plant alive and healthy, our plants looked amazing last year. I think I cut off like 16 leaves out of the entire time on each plant at the end in October.
Right.
So,
So how big? I mean, in order to cover 1,000 square foot plant, you got to have a whole lot of shade cloth.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and you remember we're growing 4, so um, Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have this year. I installed 5 pieces of um, 20 by 48 pieces.
That's
So 5 of
crazy.
those, and those run. I mean, they're relatively affordable. I think they're like 45 to $55 on Amazon, maybe $60 with tax. And
Right.
so I bought them last year. Most of them last year. We expanded our patch a little bit bigger this year, and so I had to add on an additional one this year. But yeah, and then I timed together with either zip ties, or this year I used carabiners, and they work great, and they hold together, and they have paracord that runs underneath them to keep them suspended, and works really well.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Um, so do you guys got any wind fence up at all, or?
Yeah, it's a little scraggly right now. I put up some windbreak at the start, right after we got them out of hoop houses, just around like an interior perimeter, like not the entire around part. Ron just bought some windbreak yesterday, and we just use we typically use like weed fabric that's that woven type, and then
Right.
we'll just put that up because that the thing is, Ron shared something I thought was really interesting and very helpful, is that a lot of people will put up like the actual fencing, which I've seen like some guys use, and I think I originally wanted to get that, looked great, but he was describing that unfortunately, in his opinion, the way it works is that when the wind hits it, it basically if it doesn't let the wind pass through at a diffused rate, it'll basically climb over, and then within about 4 or 5 feet, it picks up full speed, and then it still does the same damage to your plants. So we're fortunate we don't have insane winds like my buddy Brad Bledsoe.
Yeah.
I call him the king of wind country, because obviously I think many of us saw the unfortunate outturn of events that happened from this year. So but yeah, we don't have anything crazy like that. I think actually one time this year we got up to 60-mile-an-hour gusts and messed up our plants a couple times, but it was what it was. So
Right. And so what pattern do you guys use? You use Christmas tree pattern, what are y'all guys shooting for?
yeah, we're pretty cookie cutter in that regard. I know Moby Mike gets really creative with his patterns. So does my buddy Derek, and but we typically just do a Christmas tree pattern. Like this year, I'll be adding a little extra little twist to it. Like I'll be pulling some vines backwards just because the way I planted it, and probably running some tertiaries off those to fill in more space, but nothing super fancy there.
Cool. And then to stake it out, are you guys using just like meat skewer sticks, bamboo sticks? What are you guys using for that?
Yeah, so we typically use like 18 to 24-inch bamboo sticks, and we have a plethora of those, and it's crazy. I swear, like I said, our plants are growing so fast. I'll put those towards like if your secondary is right here and my knuckles, the representative of that, we'll usually put, and this is a tip, we'll usually put the bamboo sticks right here, and then let it grow so it's unhindered. Because I found that sometimes if you put them too close, you get it just affects the way they train, and so I'll set them back a little bit, and it's just crazy to see them grow, a whole foot to foot and a half in a day.
Yeah, I like that because I got some plants right now that are doing. They started picking up pace and they're doing 12 inches right now a
Oh,
day.
that's great.
Yeah, I love it. And then probably hopefully by next week I'll be pushing 16. And watching them do that is just it's insane because you go out there and you're like, okay, well here's where I marked it at last night, and I'll do like little videos for Instagram or something, right? And like I marked it here last night or yesterday morning. Let's see where we're at this morning. You go out there and
Yeah.
and it's like that is crazy to me.
Yeah.
So what's some advice that you would give new growers?
I would say, I mean, my basics: start with a goal and then work your way back from there. If your goal is to grow 1,000-pound pumpkin, find a seed that you like that fits that bill. If you're trying to break records, I think that um, I'll probably get burned at the stake for saying this, but I think that for the most part, if you're trying to break records and you're growing a pumpkin and doesn't start with a 2 in it, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. So, meaning I'm sure there's some hidden potential ones in there, right? But my understanding of how genetics work with both people and plants and things like that, if Shaquille O'Neal and a really tall lady have a baby together, it's probably not going to put out a short kid, right? And if you have two 2,500-pound pumpkins with 2,500-pound genetic lines, it's probably not going to put out an 800-pound pumpkin, all things being the same. Of course, obviously there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but I think do yourself a good service, get a really good seed. If you're trying to grow a massive pumpkin, get good products, start with a really good plan. But again, I think that's what's so awesome about this hobby and the sport, is that like I have completely different goals from, say, Shannon Engel. Shannon Engel likes to grow orange pumpkins. I think that's awesome. He likes to grow big and orange. So his goals are going to be completely different from mine, right? How he treats his plants, how he grows them. Obviously we'll have a lot of commonalities, but he's looking for beautiful big orange pumpkins, and I'm just looking for biggest, fastest growing things that show aggressive signs, things that I think are interesting. I've heard of some people really being big on that 839 Sandercock. I thought about it for a while, and I thought, I don't know, like, obviously it grew that 1,900 pounder, but Then my other big piece of advice, I think, this is for everyone. I think be bold, take a risk. We grew the 2560 last year. Ron and I both, when we pick our pumpkins and our seeds, we usually get together for lunch throughout the year. And the year before we were planning, he said, "What seeds you want to grow?" And the 2560 was the top of my list. And I'd done some research. I was like, it has 1885 in it. It's the biggest pumpkin that made it to scale off the 1885, right? Obviously, the 2907 patent was the biggest one. People have had their issues with that for whatever reason, but it was the biggest 1885 offspring. So I said, I want to grow that because I think it's going to put out a bigger pumpkin, right? And so I was like, I want to take a risk. And Ron is really big. He's pretty, he likes to take some risk, but he's
Right.
definitely not like me.
Conservative. Yeah.
Yeah, he's conservative. He's like, I want
I
to
am
grow.
too.
Yeah, he's like, I want to grow proven seeds, and I'm like, dude, I want to grow unproven seeds because I want to be the prover. I want to be like, hey, there's something special here, and let's show you why it's special. So, don't be afraid to take a risk. Be bold, go out there, ask lots of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, talk to growers. The worst you can say is no. So.
That's right. That's right. And any advice for growers who's been growing for a while?
Well, I should be listening to them because I've not been growing for a while, and yeah, I've learned.
There's plenty of people who have been growing for quite some time though, and have not grew a 2,400-pound pumpkin.
Sure.
So what
Yeah.
advice do you got for them?
Yeah, I think going back to it, I mean, again, it goes back to what your goals are. If your goal is to grow a massive pumpkin, I think that the big things are biological diversity are huge. Find a seed that starts with a two. Um, and thinking about like what other season growers are doing. Don't be afraid to try risks. One of my buddies, Leonardo, called me. He's like, "Hey Nick, I want to try using this product this year. Can you tell me how to use it?" And I said, "Sure." And I felt so honored and humbled, like that, like this guy who's a world champion pumpkin grower is reaching out to me and asking for input and advice.
Right.
So don't be afraid to try Florel. I know some people. Again, I know plenty of people who hate it because they don't think it works, and they said, "Oh, I tried it before, and all the way I used it, it aborted all my pumpkins." And to me, just like anything in life, anything can be abused or misused. Um,
Right. And
the
not
right weapon,
understood.
yeah, not understood. The right weapon in the wrong hands can do damage, right? But the right weapon in the right hands can do very good things. And so Floral is one of those things. I think if you know how to use it, you know how to dial it in, you know how to apply it. I think it can do a lot. It can give you it can break records. It can give you a new personal best coupled with everything else being right. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to touch on?
I mean, just a shameless plug. I have an Instagram page called at California Pumpkins. You've seen here. If you want to see funny pumpkin memes, also content featuring how we grow pumpkins and my journey through this year, please follow me. I'd love to do that. We're also going to be doing a
Absolutely.
giveaway with Aero Mixer actually this week. So we'll be giving away an Aero Mixer hose, an Aero Mixer pump, some SLF 100, and probably throwing a couple seeds in there. So I would just say, just give me a follow there. Outside of that, I mean, I think we covered the majority of things. I think it's been interesting. Just this whole year has been interesting. I think the theme is that everyone's starting a lot sooner. Not just us, not just Travis, but everyone is starting a lot sooner. And it'll be interesting to see how the weather plays out, to see if our pumpkins melt come September, or if they grow longer. I will say this though. If you don't give your chance, again, if you're trying to grow the biggest pumpkin possible, if you don't give yourself at least 120 days, you won't even. I was just thinking about last year. Our pumpkin was 97 days old and was still growing when we picked it. So, um,
That's crazy.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. We were still growing and doing healthy amount of weight when we picked it, and I don't have regrets about it, but I do just wish like what could have happened if we would have given it 20 or 30 more days.
If you would have had the time, what do you think the potential would have been at 120 days, weight wise?
I won't give an exact number, but I think we would have been in the 2,600 pound range. I think we would have. I still don't know if we would have beat Travis, and I'm not going to say, oh yeah, we definitely would have beat Travis.
Right,
But
right.
I think we would have made him sweat on stage. So I think
That's
we would have.
funny.
I mean, knowing. So we picked our pumpkin, day 97, and it sat off the vine for 4.5 days in the heat with
Wow.
not
So it
plugged in.
lost
So
weight. I mean, that's a
yeah.
given. It
Okay.
lost weight.
Let's just assume it lost a pound a day, 1 pound. So it was over 2,500, right? Assuming that. And so if it was still doing, let's just say it was only doing 5 pounds a day. It was still doing about 10 to 12 when we picked it. But even 5 pounds a day, what's that? An extra 100 and something pounds. So we would have
Right.
been, like I said, north of 2,600 maybe. So I don't know. I just wonder, it's
Right.
cool. But again, my lesson I take away from that is that if you don't ever give yourself a chance, if you don't plan properly, if you don't give yourself the opportunity, you'll just never know what if. And that's why this year I'm like, there's not going to be any what ifs. It's going to be, we're going to know for sure what's going to happen. So if we get that whole 120 days out of it. So
Is there anything else for Nick Kennedy coming up that he wants to grow besides giant pumpkins? Is he going to try anything else?
um okay, so I am growing just for fun. I'm not, not even a giant. I'm growing watermelons and some other stuff and some sunflowers. The sunflowers are competition sunflowers. Definitely not putting the effort into those that I'm putting into giant pumpkins, but I think one of these years you might see me go for master gardener. So we'll see what happens with that. Cindy's really inspired me there, and I have a fair amount of time on my hands where I'm able to do it. But we'll see when that day is. Maybe next year. Who knows? So.
That's very awesome. Very
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I'm going to go through the list of who we got left or who we got coming up real quick if you don't have anything else.
No, go for it.
Okay. So next week, June 18th, we've got Adam Weber. He's another giant grower. We're going to have him on. June 25th, we got Jesus Loving Homestead. July 2nd, we got Milk and Honey Homestead. July 9th, we got Florida Farm. July 16th, we got Big Valley Living. July 23rd, we got Where to Begin Homestead. July 30th, we're back to pumpkin growing, and we got Emmett Andrews coming on.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. August 6th, we got Texas Garden Guide, Destin Noak, great guy, wonderful friend. August 13th, we've got the Inquisitive Farm Wife. August 20th, back to giant growing. We got Cameron Barron going to be on with us. August 27th, we've got Gillum Farm. September 3rd or September 10th, we're trying to fill that date in with Professor Toto. So hopefully he'll be on one of those 2 days. Then we got September 17th, Yogi Hollow Farms. September 24th, we got Vikram, the plant professor. September 30th, we've got Garden State Gardening. October 8th, we've got Rooted in Texas. And then we're open the rest of the month in October. And then November 5th, we've got Enoch Graham, the urban gardener, coming back on. And then we're open the rest of that month. And then all of December's open. So if you guys want to get in on a live stream, please email me at babydrill2119@yahoo.com. We'd love to have you. Love to schedule you. Don't matter if you got a YouTube channel or not. If you want to talk about gardening, giant pumpkin growing, giant growing, whatever it is that you're passionate about, we want to have you on. So just email me again at babydrill2119@yahoo.com. In the subject, put live stream so I can make sure I get it, and we'll get you scheduled up. Man, it's been a wonderful evening. I really appreciate you doing this with me, Nick.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So, guys, we appreciate you all watching, and we'll see you next time right here in the Hollers and Hills of West Virginia. See y'all.
All right. See ya.